Hello everyone. In this tutorial, we'll learn what is proxy design pattern. Before learning about proxy design pattern, we must understand what is a design pattern. So as per the definition, design pattern provides general reusable solutions to common problems that occur in software development. The common problems may be like, how the objects communicate with each other, how to create different objects in a very optimal manner. So they provide best practices and provide templates, to solving the recurring problems. So basically, they are divided into three patterns. First are the creational pattern. So this deals with how the objects are created. Second one is the structural pattern. So it deals with how objects are composed and what is the relationship between them. And third is a behavioral pattern. It deals with how objects communicates and distribute responsibilities between them. So what is a proxy design pattern? So basically it's a structural design pattern. So by definition, it provides a surrogate or a placeholder for another object. So the placeholder here is an important word. So why do objects need a placeholder? So let us take a very use case of a proxy server. Okay, here the users interact with the server. So here the proxy server acts as an intermediary between the user and the server. So user makes a request and it first goes to the proxy servers, and proxy server returns a request back to the users through a proxy server itself. So user makes a request through the proxy server. User is not aware of the real server. Proxy server just take the request on behalf of the user. So here you can say the proxy server is a placeholder for the real server, since the user here has no clue about the real server. So by being a placeholder or a surrogate for a real server, it can provide different operations for it. For example, it can provide the authentication for the users which are coming through. It can also filter the request or responses. It can also cache the responses which are going back to the server, from the server to the user. It also can provide access control. So all these important operations can be provided by the proxy server, okay, by just being a placeholder here. So similarly, proxy pattern also controls the access to the other object, which could it could be a remote, expensive create, or requires a secure access. So in the previous example which you saw, the proxy server was a surrogate here. So this is the basic UML diagram. So for the proxy design pattern, so here we have the subject, the proxy, the real subject, and the client. Okay, the subject is the interface of the real subject. So this is the basic operations which we want to perform. So real subject will implement the subject interface, but here the proxy also implement the same subject interface and encapsulate the real object. So so the client here can directly invoke the proxy objects, and the proxy object performs the operations on behalf of the real subject because it has already encapsulated the real subject here. So proxy pattern, this is one of the use case of a proxy design pattern. So proxy design pattern can be used to create a local representation of the remote object, because here it allows the clients to interact with the local object as if it was a local object. So this, by being a placeholder here, the proxy object can help in hiding the complexities involved in the remote communication. For example, we have a remote interface here, like some operations we need to perform. So the remote object here, okay, it implements the remote interface, like it has some operation that is the remote object. But then we also have the proxy objects. Now note here that we have a remote object which is encapsulated here. So when we perform an operation, so it will just check if the remote object already exists. If not, it will create, and then it will call the real remote object through a proxy object. So the proxy demo here just can directly call the remote proxy, instead of the real subject. So it will just delegate the operations to the real subject. So this is the code snippet I shared. We have this remote interface here. We have the remote object, and then we have the remote proxy, and at the end we have the client, which is nothing but the proxy demo here, which performs the operations. So we can just fit this example in the UML diagram. So we can see here the subjects here relates to the remote interface, and the real subject relates to the remote object, and then we have the proxy we have the remote proxy, corresponding to the proxy, and then we have the client, which is nothing but the proxy demo. So we'll look at one more use case, which is nothing but a secure access. Okay, similarly, you can control or monitor access to the object through the proxy pattern. Okay, so here user can be restricted access to the real object through a proxy object. You can check for credentials in the proxy object before forwarding the request to the real object. And there is one more use case for an expensive object. Like for example, you need to create a real object lazily because object creation is very expensive. Okay, expensive objects could be a database connection, it could be image loader, or any heavy computation. So you can create object on demand only when the request is made through the proxy object. Okay, so we'll summarize what we have learned here. So as per the definition, it's nothing but a surrogate or a placeholder for the other objects. And we also learned in detail different use cases, like it can be a placeholder for a remote proxy or an expensive object, or for the secure access. So thanks for watching, and I hope this video was helpful for you.